The morning sun filtered through the oak trees lining Maple Street, casting dappled shadows across warm front porches, and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass and the neighbor's roses as James Martinez sat in his wheelchair on his small porch, the eviction notice trembling in his hands, while his service dog Rex pressed against his leg with the kind of loyalty that understands fear even without words. If you believe those who've served deserve better than this, like, share, and subscribe. James had lived in this neighborhood for 12 years, bought the modest house with his VA loan after serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, where an IED had shattered his spine and ended his military career, but not his will to live. For over a decade, he'd been the quiet neighbor who raised the flag every morning, who kept his lawn neat, despite the wheelchair, who waved at passing kids, and remembered everyone's names, even when his PTSD made leaving the house feel impossible. The property management company's incorporated entity that had bought up half the neighborhood last year had sent the eviction notice citing property violations and failure to maintain standards. But James knew the truth. He'd heard it from the new property manager 3 weeks ago when the man walked the street, taking notes, saying things like, "We re-upgrading the neighborhood demographic and looking for a different class of resident." His eyes lingering on James's wheelchair ramp and the slightly peeling paint. The moving truck was scheduled to arrive at noon, backed by a sheriff's deputy who would enforce the eviction whether it was just or not, whether James had anywhere to go or not, whether a man who'd given his legs for his country deserved to be treated like garbage or not. James had spent the night packing what he could reach, calling emergency housing numbers that all said the same thing: 6 month waiting list. Sorry, wish we could help. And now he sat here watching the morning traffic pass by, wondering if anyone would even notice when he was gone. Mrs. Chen from across the street was the first to appear, walking over with her cane and a determination in her 80-year-old eyes that made James sit up straighter. And she stood at the bottom of his ramp and said, "They tell you to leave today." When James nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat, she pulled out a cell phone and started making calls, her voice rapid-fire and fierce. Within 20 minutes, something remarkable began to happen. Neighbors started gathering, not just on James's lawn, but forming a literal human chain across his driveway, blocking access to the house. Tom and Linda from next door, the couple with 3 kids who James had helped with homework, Mr. Washington from 2 houses down, retired postal worker who'd served in Vietnam, the Rodriguez family, all 6 of them, young college students. Even the Johnsons, who'd only moved in last month. Mrs. Chen stood at the front of the group with her phone on speaker, talking to someone at the VA, her voice cutting through bureaucracy like a knife, demanding answers, invoking regulations, refusing to be dismissed. Then she was calling the local news, and then a veterans advocacy group, and then her son, who was a lawyer. And suddenly this wasn't just an eviction anymore. It was becoming something bigger, something that mattered beyond one house on one street. The property manager arrived first, stepping out of his luxury sedan with a clipboard and an annoyed expression. "What's going on here? You people need to clear this driveway. We have legal authorization to proceed with this eviction." But nobody moved, nobody spoke. They just stood there in solidarity, a wall of humanity that said, "Not today, not this veteran, not on our watch." Then the sheriff's deputy pulled up, a young guy who couldn't have been more than 20, and he walked toward the house with his hand near his radio, his face uncertain. Before he could say anything, Mr. Washington stepped forward, his Vietnam veteran cap clearly visible, and said, "Son, I know you're doing your job, but before you enforce this eviction, you need to know that this man served his country, lost the use of his legs defending your freedom, and this company is evicting him on bogus violations because they want to gentrify this neighborhood and push out anyone who does unfit their profit margin. The deputy stopped his hand, falling away from his radio, his eyes moving from Mr. Washington to James to the crowd of neighbors. And something shifted in his expression, the realization that he had a choice here, that following orders wasn't the same as doing what's right. The news van pulled up, camera already rolling, and suddenly the property manager was backing toward his car, saying things like, "This is a misunderstanding, and we need to review the file," his confidence evaporating under public scrutiny. Mrs. Chen wasn't done. She walked right up to the property manager with her phone showing a document. "I have here from VA website you cannot evict disabled veteran without proper accommodation review, without appeals process, without following federal law, and you did none of these things. So either you withdraw eviction now or my lawyer's son will bury you in lawsuits and media attention that will cost your company millions." The property manager's face went through several colors before settling on pale, and he stammered, "I'll need to consult with corporate." Mr. Watson cut him off. "Corporate didn't make the decision to stand here and enforce it. That was you, so you can be the one to call them and explain why evicting a disabled combat veteran in front of news cameras might be bad for business." The reporter was now interviewing neighbors, and Mrs. Rodriguez said with tears streaming, "James helped my daughter with her science project. He watches our house when we visit family. He is good neighbor, good man, and they treat him like he is nothing." The deputy made his own choice then, turning to the property manager. "Sir, I'm not going to enforce this eviction today. There are clear questions about the legality. I suggest you work with the family to resolve this properly." The property manager, faced with cameras, community resistance, legal threats, and an unwilling enforcement officer, did what bullies do when confronted. He backed to do, saying he'd suspend the eviction pending review, and he drove away while the neighborhood erupted in cheers. But the story didn't end there, because Mrs. Chen's lawyer's son arrived within the hour along with representatives from 2 veterans advocacy groups, and they spent the afternoon building a case so strong that by evening James had a formal letter withdrawing the eviction. More than that, the news coverage sparked a city council review of eviction practices targeting veterans and disabled residents, leading to new protections, stricter oversight, and consequences. 4 companies that tried to push out vulnerable residents for profit. Tom from next door organized a weekend paint party, and 20 neighbors showed up with brushes and supplies they'd pooled money to buy, and they turned James's house into the freshest-looking property on the block while kids played and someone set up a grill. The young deputy came back the next day off duty and apologized to James for even considering enforcing the eviction. And the 2 of them talked for an hour about service and duty and the difference between following orders and doing what's right. Mrs. Chen became James's unofficial advocate, checking in daily, helping him navigate BA resources he didn't know existed, connecting him with programs for home modifications. And when James tried to thank her, she waved him off, saying, "You protect our country. We protect you." Sometimes the cruelest moments reveal the best in people, not in the villains who try to crush the vulnerable, but in the neighbors who decide that injustice stops here, that community means standing together, that a man who gave his legs deserves to keep the home he fought to afford. Don't ever think your voice doesn't matter, that one person can't make a difference because Mrs. Chen made a phone call and sparked a movement, because Mr. Washington spoke truth and changed a deputy's mind, because a neighborhood decided that profit doesn't trump people. James still lives on Maple Street, still raises the flag every morning, but now when he sits on his porch, neighbors stop to chat. Kids come by to play with Rex, and there's a community garden in the empty lot next door that everyone tends together. Hit subscribe if this story reminded you that veterans deserve our protection as much as they gave us theirs. That community is built in moments of crisis, when ordinary people choose extraordinary courage. And drop a comment below. Do you know a veteran in your community who could use support?